Colorado Springs is the second largest city in Colorado, just behind Denver, of course, and is home to almost 500,000 people. It serves as the home for several military bases, has unbelievable locations for outdoor enthusiasts, and leans on the affordable side, at least if you're looking to live along the Front Range. But is it a good place to live? At first glance, it's kind of isolated. It's dry, windy, and Denver's quite a bit of a drive away. Ultimately, the question is, could you see yourself living here? Well, let's find out. Okay, so touching on the positive aspects of Colorado Springs first, let's discuss affordability. If you're looking to buy a home in the Springs, the median price point across the board sits at around $455,000. Now for a single family home, that's gonna be closer to $460,000. And for condos and townhomes, the price is gonna be closer to $291,000. So if you've seen my videos talking about the median home price in Denver, $610,000 by the way, then Colorado Springs is much cheaper. It is a way more affordable location. But let's say you're looking for a place to rent, or perhaps to rent now and buy later. So median rent across the board in the Springs is around $1,800 a month. More specifically though, if you're looking to rent a house, the median price falls at around $2,500 a month. That's including all sized homes here. But perhaps if you're looking for a one-bedroom apartment, well then the median rent there is going to be around $1,270 a month. Now on the topic of size, let's look at the price per square foot in Colorado Springs and go from there. So the current price per square foot in the Springs is around $217. That means with the median home price for a single family home of $460,000, the median size for a home sits at around 2,120 square feet. For apartments, I actually have this big beautiful graph here, and it shows that the median apartment size sits at around 862 square feet. Now the largest percentage of apartments in the Springs is 2 bedrooms, with 1-bedroom apartments making up about 30%. I'll throw a link below to this site because it provides a ton more information for you. Just something to consider. So another benefit of living in Colorado Springs will be its general vicinity to the outdoors. Colorado itself, especially along the Front Range, has a huge outdoor lifestyle and culture. Why? Because there is so much to do here year-round. One of the first things you'll notice about Colorado Springs, it's actually quite difficult to miss, is the massive 14,115-foot mountain called Pikes Peak that towers over the entire city. If you're unaware, there are 58 peaks in Colorado that are above 14,000 feet. So if hiking is your thing, I'd argue Colorado is one of the best states. Of course, there are hundreds of easier trails and climbs compared to this. Dozens around the Springs area. I'll throw a link below to some of the best hikes you can find. But there's more to do than just hike here. You can go whitewater rafting, rock climbing, explore specific parks like Cave of the Winds Park or Cheyenne Mountain State Park, and then also head up into the mountains during the summer to explore the nearby towns and locations in Colorado, or in the winter to head up to the resorts and do a little alpine skiing or snowboarding. Now, given Colorado Springs' location, more likely than not, you can take the scenic route through the mountains, which I will be honest is absolutely incredible. But you can also take I-25 up to Denver and then I-70 west into the mountains. It's gonna be at least an hour to 90-minute drive just to get to Denver, but that shouldn't deter you from escaping into the mountains. Now, another pro we have to talk about is the climate. So Colorado Springs is known for being a dry and sunny part of the overall state. Of course, it does get its rainfall. However, compared to the country as a whole, it's well below average. Surprise, Colorado, at least along the Front Range, is relatively dry. But what's interesting about Colorado Springs is that the climate is relatively mild. In winter, we typically see average temperatures ranging from the teens to 40s. Of course, we can have some really cold days too. It does get a bit of snowfall. I would not say enough where you're snowed in for days. Although, don't be surprised if a wild storm passes by and dumps several inches to a foot plus. Usually though, the snow can melt within a day or a couple days. But then in the spring and summertime, we'll get beautiful weather and temperatures ranging from the 60s to mid 90s. Rarely do we cross the hundreds mark. And especially since it's a dry heat, I'd argue it's much easier here than compared to other parts of the country with high humidity. I've experienced that before, and I have to tell you, I prefer the dry heat. Of course, we'll get our fair share of afternoon thunderstorms, and although a lot of newer homes have AC in the springs compared to those that are older that don't, I'd argue you can practically get by in the spring and summertime without it. In all, this dry, sunny environment makes for a terrific complement to the outdoor adventures here, as many are going to capitalize on this good weather and go out and explore. It is definitely one of the defining features of living here. The sunshine alone will make you fall in love. All right, so the next category is a bit of a pro and a con. Depends on who you are. It's context specific. I know, little weird, but I'll explain why. And what it is that Colorado Springs has a large military presence. Around 17% of the population in the Springs has some form of background in the military. Now, speaking as a vet myself, I can understand both sides. Colorado Springs is home to several military bases: Fort Carson, Peterson and Schriever Space Force bases, and the United States Air Force Academy. There is without a doubt a huge military presence here, which for military personnel who may be PCSing to the area, it's great because Colorado Springs is a fantastic place to live. There are a lot of positives to be found here. But now, as a result of having such a high military presence, that could be a con for some others. For one, and I've noticed this quite a bit myself, the frequency of large aircrafts flying overhead at certain locations can be an inconvenience or even an annoyance, depending on where you're looking to live in the Springs. Also, one worth mentioning is traffic. Now, you're gonna find traffic in any metro area. However, with the military, it's an added bonus. Now, typically this is going to be high traffic in select areas around the base, also time specific too, depending on when the soldiers need to get on post. But I wouldn't go so far as to say traffic as a whole across the city is going to get worse. That might be a bit of a stretch. At least anything worse than the typical rush hour. But if you're living close to one of these bases, I would say don't be surprised if there's quite a bit of traffic. So the next con I want to talk about is actually something I mentioned at the start of this video, and it's that Colorado Springs is more or less isolated. It really does stand alone as a city. The closest city I would say is Pueblo, which is about 45 minutes to the south, but it's much smaller than Colorado Springs. Whereas Denver, which is the main city in Colorado, is about an hour to an hour and 15 away. So although Colorado Springs is a large city, especially given the population of Colorado, it does have a bit of an isolated feel to it. Now, I'd argue that's only present if you're trying to get somewhere else. Obviously, the Springs has most, if not everything you need. However, living in places a little bit north, around Denver, or even farther north, you have the proximity to big cities like Denver, Boulder, or Fort Collins. Also, what contributes to this is how rural the surrounding areas are. The Springs, like Denver, sit right at the edge of the Great Plains. And so if you go out to the surrounding towns, probably 25 plus minutes away, you'll see a stark transition to open plains compared to that urban environment. Naturally, there are a lot of rural properties out there too. And if you're looking for a spot with land, I'd recommend looking there. However, from an environmental perspective, it really does signify a stark difference between urban living and rural living. Now, I know we started this video with whether or not you could see yourself living in the Springs. Do you have an answer yet? Or do you need more information? If you're not quite sure, I know I've mentioned Denver a couple times in this video. So if you're really curious about how Colorado Springs measures up to Denver, then I'd recommend checking out this video here. I go a bit more in depth on the two cities and help you see which one's a better option. This is Life on the Front Range. I'll see you there.